Hello again. Flutter, the days goes on. Like show must go on. We already discussed game development, testing, and now it's time for CI/CD processes. Please meet the next speaker. It's Evgeny Saturov, a team lead from Surf Company, and as well, he's famous as the creator and permanent host of the podcast about Flutter development, Flutter Dev Podcast. And he will tell us about GitHub Actions today. Welcome, Evgeny.
Hello, everybody. I'm so happy to be here with you on this conference.
Could you tell when to expect the next episode of the podcast and what will it be about? What will be the topic? I believe that many of our Russian-speaking viewers listen to it and very interested in.
What a good question. But I will not reveal this surprise now because we have a couple of ideas. We have an idea to make something about web, Flutter for web, I mean. But I'm not sure that this will be in the next episode, but who knows? We have a lot of time to make this recording.
Yes. Okay. You have this time, but I think we can start. Are you ready to give a talk?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Let's start.
So let's go. I'm not a DevOps engineer. I need to tell it first of all, but I will tell you about GitHub Actions as a great tool to manage your CI/CD processes in your Flutter project. So about me, I'm Eugene Saturov, and I'm a Flutter team lead at Surf, and I'm also a Flutter Dev podcast hoster. So welcome and listen us if you understand Russian language. We have that's kind of sad, but we have only one English language episode with Chris Sells. That was our guest during Flutter Day. And you also can subscribe me in Twitter. You see my nickname on the screen now. My Twitter is in English. I try to in English first about Flutter and what's around it. So I will be glad to see you in my Twitter. And I'm also a program committee member of Mobius. As you may know, Mobius is the largest mobile conference in Russia. And we have a lot of different talks about Android, iOS, about native technologies, and now about Flutter also. So feel free to join us as a participant or as even as a speaker. We will be so happy to see your applies with your talks. So don't forget about us, please. And also, I'm a GDG leader in my hometown in Voronezh. We are organizing different meetups, workshops, dev fests, and so on. Let me introduce my company, because Surf is middle-sized mobile studio, and we have something about 130 employees here. And that's an interesting fact that the most part of our history, we never did any cross-platform applications. We were only exclusively about native Android and iOS applications for the 9 years. But now we have 12 Flutter developers in our department and 5 Flutter projects in our portfolio. And also dozens of different financial and e-commerce applications based on native technologies. So what we are going to talk about today? Our today's plan is pretty simple. First of all, we need to talk about CI/CD in general. Why do we need it? And so on. This will be a really short part because I hope that almost everyone or even every one of you know about CI/CD, but we need to talk about it a little. Then we need to talk about GitHub Actions. In what circumstances it's better to use it and not some other technologies like Jenkins or maybe some other cloud services. And then we will go a little bit deeper. We are going to cover such topic as building a workflow with the help of GitHub Actions for your Flutter applications in an effective way. And of course, there will be a lot of pitfalls you can fall in, and you should be aware of it during this setting process. And we will cover this topic also. And then finally, in the end of our talk, we will get the result. We will get an effective deployment mechanism for our Flutter applications with the help of GitHub Actions. So let's get straight to the point. CI/CD, everybody loves it because nobody loves a routine task. Nobody loves to build applications by yourself on your own laptop because it can easily get hot and noisy, and you need to wait a couple of minutes or maybe 10 or 15 minutes. It depends on your laptop until the building process will be over. And it's kind of annoying. But as for me, I'm not a DevOps engineer. So my friends are mobile developers, and my colleagues are also mobile developers. And I see that almost nobody loves to set up CI/CD mechanism. And I see a lot of developers who don't even know how their CI/CD works and how to change something in their workflow. That's why that was one of the reasons why I think that this talk is pretty useful. So we need a fast and easy build processes in our teams, everyone. And it's also a great thing when we have one single workflow for the whole team, or maybe even across different teams, because we don't want to spend much time on some switching to other frameworks or to other services or to other languages if we use different CI/CD tools in different teams without any visible reason. It's not good. What's more, CI/CD brings us the ability to run code health checks at the right moment. I'm not only talking about tests. It's great if your project has good test coverage, because sometimes we have no time to write a lot of tests, but it's really great if it's not about you. But we need to run these tests, because if we have tests but we never run it, I don't think that they are useful. And not only tests can help us to validate our code stability, because we also have good static analysis tools in Flutter, like Flutter Analyze, and we need to run it from time to time just to validate our code base health, and maybe to detect our potential issues that can become bugs in a few days before it's too late, before our project is on fire. Everyone can commit something and burn down all the code base, and project will fail. Okay, CI/CD can save us from this situation. And finally, nobody loves to build artifacts, to assemble artifacts, to sign artifacts, especially when we talk about iOS builds. We need to make this process. I think we need more automatization. We don't need to make it by our own hands. There is no reason for that, and CI/CD can also help us with that. And is it complicated to build a handy tool for yourself? Some of you can answer yes, because we need to know much more than just regular mobile developers. We need to know something about Jenkins, how to set up it, how to install it, how to include it in our workflow. And maybe if you're an employee in a large company with complicated processes, you have dozens of services that you need to integrate with each other. Yeah, maybe. But it's challenging to build it with no money and time for your own project, or maybe for your pet project. Or maybe you just a developer in a small startup with no investors, and you have no budget for some expensive solutions that you need to do something with it, because everyone loves CI/CD. And here comes Cloud CI/CD solutions on the stage. But first, before we will dive into GitHub Actions as one of the solutions, we need to focus on the essentials. What do we need from this Cloud CI/CD solution for us? First of all, we as Flutter developers need Flutter support from this tool, because we just need to have an ability to build a simple Flutter application and nothing else. The second point is price, because sometimes we have no money. If we talk about our pet project, I don't want to spend a lot of money for that. Sometimes our company has no money because it's a little startup with no investors yet, I hope. Sometimes we don't want to spend much money on this infrastructure for some unknown reason for me. I don't know. But anyway, it's kind of important point that we need to remember about. The next is simplicity. I don't think that we need to talk a lot about simplicity, because the idea is pretty simple. Because you need to select the easiest solution from all possible solutions that can solve your problem. But you should not remember about flexibility also, because if you know that you will get in this situation when you need to switch to another solution just in next few months, just because your first solution that was kind of cheap and simple will not fit your needs in this month, that's a bad choice. You need to think twice before doing it. That's why you need always to remember both about simplicity and flexibility. Finally, GitHub Actions. Why GitHub Actions? Because I found GitHub Actions that kind of service that fit all these needs. First of all, it supports everything you can imagine, not only Flutter. You can install really all the software you want on these instances you can rent from GitHub. These instances can be based on Windows, macOS, or Linux. So you can select operation system based on your needs. What's more, it's really cheap. Sometimes it's even free for public repositories on GitHub. GitHub Actions is completely free solution, and that's a good news for open source developers or for those whose projects are just in public, but also for those who works in private accounts and private repos. They has very gentle limits, but we will talk about it a little bit later. It's really easy to understand and to use. If you know YAML, you can write some simple instructions for your CI/CD, and you can change it in a moment. And it is really flexible because of Marketplace. Marketplace is a really great place where you can find thousands of ready-made actions for you. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, and when they pay, they usually not so cheap, because the most of them needs a regular subscription for every developer in your team, something about $4 or $9, and it's pretty expensive for large teams. So be aware of it. But you can always write your own actions for you, and this is really mighty things to improve your workflows. But what's about workflows? What is workflow in the GitHub terminology? First of all, we need to focus on what's a workflow. Workflow is YAML file that should be placed in GitHub/workflows folder directly in your root project folder. And every workflow, and we can have really a lot of workflows in our single repo. We have no limits for that. Every workflow should answer two main questions. First of all, what we need to do. And the second question is when we need to do it. By what we need to do, I mean some simple actions you can you usually can act by your own hand. Just for example, you can build your project, you can run tests over the project, you can analyze your code, and everything you can imagine. But what about the second question? It's about the triggering event that will trigger your workflow. For example, we can say that, okay, let's every pull request that will be created in our repository will trigger our workflow. And that's enough. Runners. The second important topic are runners, because we have two variants to select, GitHub-hosted runners and self-hosted runners. The second is great because it can save you a lot of money for your large project with a lot of developers, because self-hosted runners are completely free. You just need to buy your own machine and to place it somewhere in your office and to include it in into your infrastructure and nothing else. But it won't cost you any money monthly. But what about GitHub hosted runners? Because GitHub hosted runners is the most easiest solution ever you can imagine. But you need to understand that you rent these virtual machines that are placed somewhere in GitHub. And you can rent it for a couple of minutes just for the one build. And these GitHub hosted runners will be covered in my talk later on my slides. So let's get further, because we need to talk about workflow. Here on the slide, you see the perfect recipe from me for a workflow. And here I try to mention all the steps we need to implement during our setup process. I will not read all these points, because every slide after that slide will cover every point in more details. What about workflow name? This is the simplest part, because it's just a name. It should be short, clear, and what's more, it should be self-described. Because name will be the first thing you will see in the GitHub Actions console, and you will recognize your workflows by this name, because you can have a lot of different workflows for different needs. So be sure that your workflow name is self-described. We can set up our name just by that simple syntax. This can be the first line of our workflow YAML file. Trigger an event. This is very important to select your trigger an event right, because it will cost you money if your workflow will run on every event you can find in the documentation. There are really huge amount of events you can react on. For example, push code label fork your repository, pull request creation. There are some kind of usual traditional events, but there are some unusual events like starring. Somebody can place a star to your repo, and your repo can react somehow, just in the form of starting this workflow. Why not? And we will select just pull request creation event for triggering our workflow, because we need to validate code changes, first of all. And code changes can be possible just in a form of pull requests, I hope. So we need to specify this event in a block called on that can follow our name in our workflow YAML file. But you can question me, what does this mean? What does this branches block mean? Usually we have no reason to run our workflow in case of every pull request creation, because we can sometimes we can make pull request from one branch to another, but the target branch is not our main default branch at this moment. That's why we can specify this mask dev/sprint for our branch name. It can be it is my own name convention. I used to use it in my own project, but you can specify your branches names, and you can specify masks for your branches names. And what result will we get in that case? Our workflow will trigger only in that case if our new created pull request targets to the branch with the name of dev/sprint, and then something after that. We can also optimize these triggering events. We can exclude some files that I will explain you a little bit, because when somebody do something with your documentation in your project, it's really great when you have docs in your project. But when you make typo in your documentation, or even when you remove it completely, your project can't fail just about it. The same with Swagger, the same with your editor configuration if you push it to your repository. So we can exclude it from our triggering event. That means that if our pull request contains only changes in these directories, in these files, in documentation, Swagger, or VS Code configuration, it won't trigger our workflow, and we can we can spend this time more effective way. Jobs. Jobs are instructions for the runner. Jobs are usually independent from each other, but it's not really required, because in some complicated cases we can depend one job or on another. Job can be just the single job in our workflow, or we can have more jobs in a workflow. And by default, jobs run in parallel if we have no complicated cases with these dependents. A job itself contains a sequence of tasks called steps. These steps are just little actions that can follow each other, and with the help of these steps we will get some results. Each jobs run in a special environment, and every job can be placed here in the jobs block. So okay, let's move further. Let's move to the environment, because our environment can be set up with 3 different operation systems: Linux, Windows, and Mac OS. And no matter what operation system we choose, our environmental virtual machine has the same hardware resources. You can see it here on the screen. It's not top machine and your laptop is probably much more powerful, but it should be enough for your build, I think. And the good news is that there really tons of software is pre-installed on that machines. But if your desired software is not in the list, you can install it by yourself by writing your own action. It is not a problem. But we will configure our job environment only with Ubuntu. And this is the sad story, because you may ask me, come on, this is Flutter. We need to build both Android application and iOS application. But I need to be honest. You can ask me what are these numbers just behind the operation system names in this first point. These numbers are special coefficients that you should think as a price of 1 minute of build time of runner with this operation system installed on it. On the most affordable plan called GitHub Free, that costs you nothing, zero, we have 2,000 minutes of build time per month. And that should be enough for your own pet project, or even for a little project with a couple of developers. But we have 2,000 minutes of build time only for Linux machines. If we select Windows machines, we have only 1,000 minutes per month for free. But in a case we select Mac OS machines, we have only 200 minutes for free. And that's really nothing, even for your own pet project, because every build of a simple Flutter project can take you something about 5 or 7 minutes per build. So you can notice that 200 minutes hardly can be enough for you. Yeah, of course, you can buy GitHub Pro, GitHub Team, GitHub Enterprise Cloud, but it will cost you some money. But remember, our goal is to make CI/CD solution for free, or at least cheap enough. And yeah, that's said. But the good news is that you can use macOS on your public repos for free, and there are no limits. Okay, steps. We need to implement some steps, and I will follow you through all of them. You can find the full list of all steps of our regular workflow for the typical Flutter project here on this slide. First of all, we should check out our repo. Because we have our repository on GitHub, and we need to check out it to our virtual machine we rent from Github Actions as a GitHub hosted runner. And this is the first example of usage of predefined actions. These actions are provided by GitHub Actions team, and some of these actions are pretty useful, like this called checkout, and everything you need to do is to write this single piece of code, users, and then actions checkout, and you need to specify the version of this action. The next step, we need to install software to make Flutter application build possible. We need JDK, and we need also Flutter. For the first thing, we can use a predefined action called setup Java, and we can specify the specific Java version. But the second action is not predefined, because it is the action from the community member, and Flutter action from Subasito is pretty useful and pretty popular, because it can help you with this task. It can install Flutter SDK on your completely clear instance. And yeah, it's important point that every time we run our workflow, It happened on a completely clear instance without any additional software, and you can't pre-install software on this instance, and you need to install it over and over again every time you run your workflow. So in that case, we need to run our Flutter action to install it. It won't take a lot of time anyway, but this Flutter action has some pretty useful parameters like channel. You can select channel you need to use for your build. For example, if you prefer dev channel for your builds, if you prefer to get all Flutter updates on the fly, you can select dev channel here in this configuration. Or you can also specify a specific Flutter version for your build if you're not a big fan of after upgrade while using your Flutter SDK. The next step, we need to sync our project's dependencies, and that's why we need to run flutter pub get terminal command. This is just a regular flutter pub get and nothing else. This command will follow after this installation, and that means that we can use Flutter terminal tool in that place. But what if the project has multiple sub-projects? Because we need to call pub get for all of them, or we can fall into some unpredictable troubles. I have a useful script that you can use in your case. This script can find every sub-project in your Flutter project and call Flutter pub get for every sub-project you can find in your structure. You can wrap it into a bash script, and you can run your bash scripts very simple and using this syntax. The next step, static analysis tool. As far as you know, we have Flutter analyze terminal command that can do everything for you. You just really don't need to set up it somehow. Maybe just to specify some specific rules. You need to check. You can ask this analyze tool to check it. But what's wrong with Flutter analyze terminal command? Because there is some pitfall you can fall in. Because I found out some strange behavior, because every info level issue will lead you to the project failure, and that looks strange for me because I don't think that it's right. Sometimes we just have a lot of different info level issues we don't care about, and we don't need to run and to do something with these issues right now if we have no time for that, if we have more critical tasks right now. But Flutter Analyze don't care about that. And if we have at least one info level issue, he will fail our build in this moment. But we can have a dirty workaround just to avoid this issue. I wrote this script that can check if our issues are the info level issues only, and in that case, it will not throw you exit code 1. Yeah, I know that looks like, I don't know, that's a very, very dirty hack, but it is what it is. Yeah, and you can wrap it in your bash script and run it this way. Finally, executing tests. There are no surprises about tests, but you need to be aware of empty test classes, because maybe you have a tradition to create an empty test class for every class you have in your project. And okay, maybe I will write some tests one time I will have time to do it, but no, don't do that, because if we have test class with no tests inside, with no implemented tests here, it will cause build failure in that case. Yeah, and we can nothing to do with that. We need just to know that and to avoid having empty test classes in our Flutter project. It can fail your build for some unknown reason. What about assembling artifacts? Because it's a very important point. We need to assemble artifacts to deploy it to our testers, to deploy it to some cloud services. And I will cover this topic in the next few slides. But first of all, we need to get this APK. Remember that we can use Mac OS if in case we're working in private repos, just because of very, very low limits for that. We can use just a regular Flutter build APK command for that, but it's not enough for us, because with the because we need to we usually need to sign our builds with our release key store, and for that we need to specify at least 4 values like store password, key alias, and store file location, where we can find our key store. That way we need to use GitHub Secrets service. This service allows you to store some critical sensitive data. If you think that it's a good idea for you to place your credentials from your key store to some other service like GitHub, you can do it. And you can even read values of these secrets after you published it, because you can only update it or you can remove it completely. You can only see aliases of them after you have published them. But after that, if you have your key store properties published in GitHub Secrets repository, you can just specify them here on this configuration in form of $, and after that you need to type system.env your property alias. And this is a syntax of working with system environments from GitHub Secrets. And this key store config Gradle you can apply to your build Gradle configuration of your application in your sign-in config block, and yeah, it will be all right with sign-in. And here we can have this if-else statement, because for what purpose? I need to tell you that the purpose is that sometimes we need to build our application locally on our laptop, on our desktop, it doesn't matter. And in that case, we can have this file with this key store credentials, and we will be this file won't be pushed to the repo, because these are sensitive data. We can just store it locally on our machine, and this file will be called key store release properties. And here in the first line, we need to check if this file exists in our machine, because if it exists, it means that this process ran on your local laptop. And in the opposite case, it means that your build is run on a CI/CD tool like GitHub Actions in our case. Finally, we need to apply our key store config here in a sign-in config in our build Gradle file of our application. And that is all. And we can also have some sign-in configs for release builds, for developer builds, you know. And the last step, we need to deploy our application somewhere. For example, GitHub Storage. In our free plan, we have only 5 megabytes of GitHub storage, and the strange thing is that we have no ability to clean it by our hands. I was really surprised by that, but maybe I just did not found this button, but it was a strange story. Anyway, you can use this predefined upload artifact action for deploying your APK just after it was built. After the previous step, you can deploy this build to your GitHub storage, and you can download your APK file from this GitHub storage from your web interface. But in case that we have just only 500 megabytes in our GitHub storage, we can we can fall into the situation where it's not enough for us, because every APK can, especially in the debug variant, can weight something like 40 megabytes. And for that purpose, I wrote this script. And the script is completely different workflow, not the workflow we discussed before. And this workflow is responsible for the only one thing. This workflow will clear your GitHub storage every day at 9 a.m. regularly, and it will remove all artifacts that are older than 1 week. Yeah, another dirty hack for you. What about Firebase app distribution? We use Firebase app distribution in our team just to spread our builds between our testers, between our stakeholders, our managers, and so on. And we have pretty nice action from the community called Firebase distribution GitHub action. It has also parameters like application ID you can find on your Firebase console in your project settings, and also token. This token you can get using a CLI tool that also provided by Firebase. You can specify groups, tester groups that will get this build, and some other properties. And this application ID from Firebase and Firebase token you can store also directly in GitHub secrets settings, and it is kind of secure, I hope. So that is all about setting up our steps for the workflow, and let's say a couple of words about optimization. The first thing I can advise you is to configure your workflow first in a public repository, maybe with the usage of some sample project with no sensitive data, because you have no limits, and you have really free plan, and you can spend as many time as you want for setting up your workflow and for training to do it. Then you have an ability to just to move your workflow to your own private repo, but you can be at this moment you will be sure that this workflow is good enough. Next advice is to implement all your steps in your workflow in a form of bash script, because it is more convenient to check them locally in a form of bash scripts. So I found it the nice idea, just not to type some terminal commands after the run in your steps descriptions. And finally, you can make a copy of your workflow in a form of bash script of every step. Especially it is convenient when every step is a bash script too, and you can run it locally periodically from time to time just to confirm it's okay with your workflow, and you can be sure that it is okay with. It is everything okay with your GitHub Actions settings. And okay, main points of my talk. GitHub Actions is really easy to learn. It has great documentation where you can find everything you hear in these slides and even more. I recommend you to follow to the documentation if you're interested in GitHub Actions for a Flutter project or maybe for Android project or whatever you want. GitHub Actions is cheap for little projects, is completely free for public projects, and it's good. It's very flexible thanks to the marketplace with the tons of different predefined actions. It fits well for the Flutter project as well. Yeah, with some caveats, just because of the high price of macOS machines, but in general, everything is possible. So thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you can write me directly in Twitter, or you can ask it now. Thanks you for your attention. It was very pleasant to be with you here today.
Thank you, Evgeny. It was interesting, and we have questions. Some questions for you.
Yeah, nice.
And I have a question as well, but my question, I think, is the same that already asked by Rahmanko. How GitHub Actions compares with CodeMagic and with Bitrise functionality?
I have not so much time spending playing with CodeMagic or Bitrise, but I think that CodeMagic machines are a little bit more powerful. Hardware is a little bit better than we have when we use GitHub Actions, but we have only 500 minutes here for free per month, and this is the main change from the GitHub, because when we use Ubuntu machines here, we can use 2,000 minutes for free in a completely free plan. But I don't think that there are a lot of changes in the functionality between all of these services. Maybe just different forms of declaring our workflows, different syntax. Maybe somewhere it's easier to make something. But I made this choice. I select GitHub Actions for my own project. First of all, because large marketplace where you can find really tons of useful actions. I never saw something like this in CodeMagic. Sorry if I'm mistaken, but that it is.
Okay, got it. And we have another one question. Will it save us time in the GitHub pipeline if we store generated code and have it in a version control system?
Yeah, you can do it. There are actions for that. You can push code. You can generate code. You can push it just in time of your workflow runs. This is possible. It was not covered in my talk. Yeah, that's really. But this talk is kind of basic. But yeah, the short answer, yeah, it's possible and it's not complicated.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We have no more question.
Okay.
Yes, and we have to choose what question was more interesting. But I have to predict you that Viktor Krechitov already was a winner in one of previous talk. But you have as well not a lot of choice.
Okay. Okay, let's select the first question. That way.
Yes.
That was a surprise.
Okay. Thank you. Rahmanko called you, give your contacts, send them to our email, mobilepeoplecommunity@gmail.com. We will wait your contacts. Thank you for your attention, and waiting for you all on the next track. It will be live episode of Mobile People Talks podcast. And this episode will be first time in English and first time in live mode. And you can see now one of our guests there. Evgeny will join us there as well.
Yeah, see you in a couple of minutes.
Yes, see you. Bye.
Bye.